Good morning. Hey, Marla. I'm grateful I'm teaching too. Thank you. Thanks for showing up. Hello, Monday. How many weeks have we been in quarantine? I've lost count. I think counting at this point is counterproductive. Hi, Carmen. I think we just have to work on more and more being present, right? Because we don't know how long this is going on. Hi, Betsy and Sterling. Thanks for being here. Welcome, everybody. Another hot day. Hey, Mary Beth. Another long walk with my dog Prince this morning. I don't think you'll be seeing him today. He's snuggling with one of the girls upstairs. Lucky him. So, let me know if you're here. Hi, Joan. Good morning. Say hello. It's fun to know where people are coming from, especially if you're not in the immediate DC vicinity. Hi, Judy. Good morning. Some of you are quite literally in my own backyard, or walking distance at least, which is really nice to know community is close by, even when we can't be physically close, just to know that if we needed to be, we could. And that's one of the comforts of this time. Okay, we'll do a formal beginning. Welcome to Sun and Moon Yoga Studio's YouTube channel. I am Annie Moyer, and I chose to name this short practice today, Let the Sun Shine In, but Not Too Much. The idea here is to explore the balance between sourcing enough power and warmth and energy to allow us to be full of capacity to be in the world and do what we need to do, with not overdoing it so that we become depleted. And we all know that the negative effects of having too much sun, too much light, too much heat, too much energy. We get exhausted. We can get dehydrated. We can become angry or hostile. And all of this on a personal, individual level, but also on a community and national and global scale too. The unfiltered bearing down heat from the sun combined with what we are producing from our lives here on Earth are warming the planet and changing the climate to our detriment. Exploring this in a yoga practice begins with locating the source of power in the body. Traditionally, the invitation is to consider that right here at the solar plexus, so at the base of the sternum, known as the xiphoid process, just below that point where the bottommost floating ribs are, we have this power center just above the abdominal organs where they float and are suspended. And right at that point, the diaphragm crosses over in its dome. And we know that having the wind knocked out of us can render us immobile and useless for a short period of time. We also know that if it gets too big, too much, we're overshooting, we're allowing ego to take over and ambition, and we lose humility, we lose balance, we get too big for our britches. But we can't lose the source of power, we can't lose our source of energy. Thank goodness for the sun, thank goodness for fire. It's what allowed civilization to be born. It's what allowed us to gather and share food together that we cooked over that fire millions of years ago. And at the same time, caution, don't get too close. We're exploring this morning in the body and in the mind and in the breath and the spirit how to make this source of power feel big, how to not expose ourselves in an exaggerated way, but just to open ourselves up in a balanced way. And so we're going to look at poses that feel big across this energy center, but we don't want them to feel too big. Neither do we want them to feel too small. We're looking for them to feel just right. Because if they're too big, if they're too much, if we fly too high, too close to the sun, then we become like Icarus and we fall from grace with melted wings and dashed hopes and dreams. Looking for balance is really the cornerstone of yoga practice. It's what the word means, to yoke together opposing forces in a place that feels like equanimity, that feels like peace, that feels like ease, and that feels functional in a balanced way. I'll invite you to begin by finding a blanket. Any blanket will do, even a small rectangular pillow will do, to lie over, and I'll show you where to position that. So as you come to your mat, have the roll be fairly thick, but not overly thick, not big and bulky. And position it so it runs across the back lower half of your rib cage. So we don't want it way up high into the neck, and we don't want it way down low into the lumbar spine, into the lower back. We want it right across the middle so that when you lie back over it, if you took your arms overhead and laid them on the ground, your shoulders might be floating a little bit off the ground, but they're not shoved forward enough. So the roll is beneath the ribs on the lower half of the rib cage. The lower back is free and the neck is free. So there's nothing under the surfaces of the neck or the lower back. The support is in between. If having your arms up overhead is uncomfortable, you can have them out like goalpost or cactus shape. You can straighten the arms out more to the side. You can have them a little lower. What we want to avoid is having them propped up on the support that you're lying on, because that's going to shove the shoulders too far forward. So some comfortable way to have your arms over and above the bolster or blanket and reaching back in any amount to any degree. You'll notice that my feet are active as if I'm standing on the ground, which corresponds to my legs being active and awake, as opposed to having them flopping out and relaxed to the sides. That's not a wrong position for your legs, but for the purposes this morning to explore this balancing power at the solar plexus, then we want the feet active. And by the way, I don't think that common Western anatomical term solar plexus is a coincidence. There is a source of strength and power that lives here, much like the sun around which we revolve. So the next stop is the breath, to bring awareness to where you feel it in the body. One handy trick is if you have a block nearby, you can put it right over that spot. Any medium weight object will do. So anything you have handy is fine. And if there's nothing handy, that's fine. You can just imagine a small, medium weight there. And for the next few breaths, take the breath in the front body, fill up the solar plexus, fan out the ribs, and try to make that object or that imaginary object rise up as you inhale. And after a few rounds of this breath, you may notice a little bit of strain in the lower back, a little bit of shallowness in the breath. These are the things we want to avoid. And so instead, let's try a few inhales that minimize the movement of the block or any object you may have placed there. So you inhale, and you'll notice that the back body can fill. You may notice additional pressure into the bolster or the blanket you have underneath you. And you may notice that the whole spine can have a tendency to lengthen and create more space between the vertebrae with breath that fills the back body. You are still strong, powerful, sourcing momentous energy without depleting it. So it's a sustainable way of breathing and moving to have this awareness of breath in the back. So it almost protects the solar plexus. And instead of fanning the ribs up and out, you may feel that it's collecting them down and in and then out across the back. And if you're not sure if whatever you've placed on top of you is moving or not with an inhale, you can put a hand there. And notice if it's receiving the breath or if it's helping to guard and protect this space in front. Incidentally, we have more lung tissue in the back half of the lungs than we do in the front half. So it's a little bit of an urban legend to suggest that big heart opening, forward opening postures allow us to take deeper breaths. We need just as much, if not more, breath in the back. So now if you have a block or an object on top of you, hold it in your two palms. If not, just have the two palms facing each other as you reach your arms straight up to the ceiling. Also, I'll mention at this point, if your neck feels strained by having it dropping away off the back of the roll, then use one hand, pick up your head and slide something underneath your head like a block or a smaller pillow. So this is a perfectly appropriate way to do this practice as well. I'm going to take the block and instead holding it in my hands, in the palms, arms straight. On the inhale, reach back. Take the arms back behind you while you're still letting the breath fill the back body and not overexpose the solar plexus. And on the inhale, the arms come up and they can come forward and a little bit down. And so we'll do that a few more times. Inhale, arms rise. Exhale, arms drop. And we are tending the fire that lives right here in the body without letting it burn too bright or too big. So one more time. Inhale, the arms Rise and reach back, holding on to whatever you may be holding on to. Exhale to come down. If you're holding on to something, you can put it to the side. Now, before you come out of this, just a note of warning. We don't want to just lift the head up because that can really strain the neck. Nor do we want to roll to the side with the head lower than the heart because that can trigger vertigo. So instead, bend your knees, reach your hands back under your head, lift it just a little bit, and then slide backwards. So now whatever was underneath your ribs, blanket, bolster, whatever it was, pillow, we're going to take it and lift the hips and slide it under the hips. So now the hips are a little higher than the heart, and the shoulders and the head are on an even plane on the floor. Roll your upper arms out so the shoulders draw back and in toward each other underneath your back toward the spine. So now we're in a small bridge pose supported by something under the sacrum. Knees bent, feet on the floor. Draw one knee in toward your chest. Keep the spine neutral, breathing into the back. On the next exhale, kick up the shin until the leg gets relatively straight. And then on your next inhale, stretch the leg out in front of you and slowly, slowly lower it to the ground. And notice if the rib cage has flared up and out. Invite it back in. And then bend the knee, foot to the floor. Do the same thing on the other leg. Pull the knee in on an exhale, wait for an inhale. On the next exhale, kick up the shin until the leg gets as straight as it will get. Inhale, stretch the leg out, reach it away, reach it away, reach it away, and slowly lower it down. And another breath, bend the knee, foot to the floor. We'll do that another time on each side. Pacing the movement, harnessing energy, sourcing heat, and monitoring it so it doesn't get to be too much. Repeating on the second side, reaching, 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 lowering, lowering, lowering. Bend the knee, foot to the floor. One more time on each side. Knee comes in. On the next exhale, kick the shin up. On the inhale, stretch it out, lower it down, bit by bit by bit, and then foot back to the floor. Last one, exhale the knee in, wait for an inhale, let it fill the back without flaring up the ribs. Exhale, straighten the leg, and slowly, bit by bit, it goes down and down and down. All right, so 2 feet on the floor, press into the feet, raise the hips up, slide the blanket out from underneath you, put it off to the side, and then lower down. And then find your way all the way over onto your side and onto your hands and knees. Tuck your toes and inhale as you arch the spine down like a hammock. And oops, did the ribs flare out? Is the solar plexus too exposed, too open? So without changing the shape of the hammock, fill the back body with breath. And you may feel tempered. You may feel a little more balanced and even a little stronger. And then from there, downward facing dog. And practice the same awareness. The bottom of the rib cage is contained, and the breath is filling the back of the body. And now from here, look between your two hands. Pick one heel to ground to the floor. You can bend both knees and then step the other foot forward between your two hands. And we're going to rise up into a warrior one pose, strong grounding through the legs and feet. And then notice the tendency of the rib cage to splay out, especially in a pose like warrior, which suggests a really forward moving, assertive energy. So temper that, draw it back in, fill the back with body, maintain balance in this source of power and heat, and raise the arms and lift the gaze and celebrate the sun. Let it shine in, but don't let it overtake you. Don't be like Icarus. If you're not up on your Greek mythology, it's okay. Just Google Icarus, flying too close to the sun. And long, slow, steady breaths. And then float the arms down. Reach for the floor. Blocks under the hands are always a good idea if you have them handy. I'm going to put mine there. Lift up the back heel. Pivot on the toes so they're pointing forward. Let the hips drop. Press the back thigh up. And then fill the back of the body. So here in the forward lunge, it's a nice place to tuck in a little bit with the bottom of the ribs, because you have this extra support of the hands down. And then if you've got the blocks, you can hold on to them and step back to dog pose, or you can take them to the sides and explore where you feel the breath filling, making space, where you can temper an exaggeration of too much in one place. And then ground the other heel to the floor and step the foot forward on the second side for warrior. And then press into the feet, strong in the legs as you rise up and reach the arms overhead. And then notice if you've got too much exposure and draw it in and fill out on the back. Long, steady breaths. Lift your gaze to the source of all power and heat and energy on the planet, but understand the dangers inherent. Make good plans to balance it all out. And then release. Arms down. Grab your blocks if you'd like to have them there for the high lunge. Lift up the back heel, pivot the toes forward. Sink the hips, but keep the back thigh on guard, lifting up tall. Lengthen the spine and contain the lower ribs. And breathe. And then push back, downward facing dog. You can dismiss the blocks here if you'd like. Long, slow, and steady in the breath. Long, slow, and steady in the body. And then shift forward to plank pose. And rather than letting the belly splay forward and the rib cage flare out, contain, invite them back in. And then bring your knees to the floor. Extend one leg back and then rotate so you're leaning on the inner edge of the foot, slicing into the floor like a knife. And then open your arm, reach to the ceiling. So you're in a modified side plank pose, supported by the bent knee that's on the ground. Recall the feeling of containing the breath in the front when you were lying back over the roll. And recall the feeling of the breath expanding into that roll on the back. And from there, nice and tempered power, lift up the back leg. And so now we're in a kneeling half moon pose with slow, steady, fluid breaths. And then release the arm, turn to the floor, step back to downward facing dog. And then bring the knees down and extend the other leg back and pivot on the toes. So you land the inner edge of the foot, slicing it into the floor. Open up the arm to the other side. Gather up the ribs, breathe into the back. Temper the inherent power that lives inside of you. Use it to your advantage and to everyone else's advantage. Maintaining that balance and sustainability. And then lift up the back leg. And breathe. And then bring it back down. 2 knees to the ground. Drop back to child's pose. And lower the forehead either to the floor or to a block. And here's a nice counter pose to the big forward opening postures. In child's pose, we gather it all up. We soothe ourselves on the inside. A little bit of a retreat from the hot world that we live in. And then gently saving the head for last, walk your hands back and roll up. And then come onto your knees. So standing on your knees, tuck your toes. And look back for one heel and reach a hand back toward that heel. If your fingertips touch it, that's great. If they don't, maybe you put a block in between the two at any height. Lean back, lift the heart, but don't expose the solar plexus. And reach one arm up for a half camel. Lift your gaze and breathe into the back. So we never lose sight of what's behind us. We never lose sight of what we can't see. As strange as that sounds. Never lose sight of what you can't see. It's like a Zen koan. And then come back up and switch sides. Even if you can reach for your heel, putting a block there is a nice comfort, a nice prop to experience. So leaning back, lifting the heart, containing the solar plexus, reach up. The sun is still shining in for sure. We're just not overdoing it. And then release and come up. And then come to sit with your legs crossed in front of you. A block or a blanket will be nice to have here to experiment with a half lotus position. So bring the knees a little closer together than you normally might in a cross-legged seat. And then lean back and lift one leg up. And then put something on top of the opposite knee. Flex your foot. And then sit back down with the legs nice and tall, and then take something else to prop under the other knee. Now, it might feel better to take away one prop or the other. And it might feel better to have the foot of the top leg, rather than sitting on top of the knee, a little forward with something underneath it. So you can play around. There's not a wrong way to do it unless you're hurting something in your body. And that's the physical body equivalent of flying too close to the sun, letting ambition drive us to the source of heat that's going to be too much. Keeping the foot flexed helps protect the knee. And breathing into the back body helps protect the whole system by maintaining steady balance. And let's try the other side. So lean back, undo, and then put the other leg on top and find some positioning that makes sense. And it likely will not be the same on the second side. You can invite the top foot maybe closer in to the hip crease. A traditional lotus pose would have the foot way up close, the heel right into the crease of the hip, almost touching into the lower abdomen, so that if you folded forward, you get a little belly massage or stimulation with the heel. For today, we're sitting upright. And then lean back and release. Try it again on the second side. You may experience a difference. Inviting the heel as high or as low as it wants to be to protect the knee and the hip, and then as close into the hip crease or as far away as it needs to be. Sitting tall, breathing slowly and steadily. Notice a feeling of space behind the neck. Let the jaw be level to the floor, the chin slightly dropping. And then lean back and once more switch legs, exploring the other side. Sit nice and tall. Remember to keep the feet flexed to protect the knees. And feel the soft breath. Now, as we release the effort in the body, we can bring more ease, more soft, quiet quality to the breath. And then lean back. And now a symmetrical seat with the feet together and the knees wide. You can prop up with blocks or blankets, always sitting in Baddha Konasana, bound angle pose. Tall, clear in the breath, hopefully clear in the mind, warm in the heart, and balanced in the source of power just beneath it. And then from here, I'll bring my palms together and express gratitude for this opportunity to share with you today. And I wish all beings peace and ease from suffering. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. Stay cool. Let the sun shine in, but not too much. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks, everybody. So welcome, Mary Beth. You're so welcome, Ray and Marla and Joan. Hey, Sandra. Thank you. Everybody's so welcome. Take good care.